Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to give my spoiler review, and we're going to talk about all things spoilers, Easter eggs, and things you missed. To jump right in, this was a non-traditional Batman story. To me, it really fleshed out his origin without even having to be an origin story. It had such a great beginning to me. It even kind of scared me. I was so invested within the first 10 minutes, and that's something that not a lot of movies can achieve that easily. We got to see just how scared all of these criminals were of the Batman without even having to see him. And to me, that felt like Batman. That felt so realistic when thinking about a more fear-fueled Batman. Like, you don't even have to see him to know that he could be watching you. He could be about to lay you out at any moment, and you wouldn't know. And that's exactly why it works. He doesn't have to do anything, and you're already scared of him. Because Batman can't be at all places at once. He doesn't have super speed. He doesn't have flight. He has to pick and choose where he's at. But the fact that he can scare the criminals of Gotham so easily, it just makes complete sense to me. As for the Batsuit, it was so practical. It shows that Bruce has clearly put a lot of prep time into it based on things like, say, his wingsuit and the flap to give himself adrenaline or venom, whatever you may think. And that's perfect because in many stories, we compare Batman to other, heroes or villains, and a lot of the time he comes out on top because he's had that prep time. Because he's prepared for the worst scenario. It didn't even have to show us a training montage or anything. Kind of like in Batman vs. Superman, where we see Ben Affleck preparing to fight Superman. We didn't have to see that. We already know that Batman is capable of preparing himself before any kind of fight that he's expecting. And so to see him pull out these tools and gadgets right on the fly and just do his thing was great. And I don't know about anyone else, but talking about the costume still, in some of these shots, I'll pull it up on screen, but it kind of reminded me of the Adam West Batsuit, if that makes any sense. Like, when he's talking to the Riddler in some of these scenes, it kind of looks like to me, with the lighting and everything, it just, it really brings out his eyebrows. And I thought that was kind of cool. Like, even if that wasn't the intention, it kind of seemed like, to me, I might be reaching, but it seemed like a slight little nod. It was really cool to see. Like, I noticed that in theaters on the first viewing, and I was like, wow. Like, they actually made that look good. Because we've gone through a bunch of weird things, I don't even have to name them. To continue on down this bulleted list I made right after the first viewing I had, and it might sound a little weird, but without even having Robert Pattinson make any expressions, necessarily, I think this movie showed so much emotion with him, mainly his eyes. And it had such great character growth, and I think that's really what brought me in too. I think the biggest example of this was that at the beginning, we meet this gang right off the bat, and it shows Batman laying into all of them. And the man that they were originally after is just kind of on the ground, and he's so scared of Batman. I mean, who wouldn't be? But he feels like he's next, like he's the next target, even though Bruce was literally only there to save him. But I think the growth happens when, at the end of the movie, we get this obvious shot of Batman helping this girl onto the helicopter. He's saving her, and she reaches out to him. And it reminded me a lot of the Batman v Superman scene where, the woman's reaching out to Superman because he's a hopeful figure. And so in my eyes now, this showed that, Bruce really experienced a lot of character growth. He had to lose in this movie to grow, because that was the point. It's similar to Spider-Man Homecoming. And, his Tom Holland's trilogy, he didn't become our full Spider-Man until No Way Home, it seems like. And so this is year 2. We're used to seeing Batman, get what he needs done and flee the scene. He'll disappear out of thin air. But because he lost, he grew from that and ended up staying with the citizens of Gotham and helping them out. He came out of the shadows, just covered in mud. He looked awful, but he was there for them. And that woman saw him as a hero. She didn't want to leave him, which is it's kind of weird. Like, who wants to be inside Batman's arms? Like, that's a little freaky. He's a little freaky. But it showed that the point of the story was that he wasn't going to win. This was year 2. He doesn't have the necessary skills to win. We had this random cop explain what the tool was from the beginning, and the carpet pry tool, whatever it's called. And Batman didn't even know what that was. This is a more world's greatest detective type film, but he wasn't. He was not the world's greatest detective, and that's all right. That's the point. He's learning from that, and we're eventually going to see this Batman that we've come to love. The Wingsuit Scene is a perfect example of how he is not a professional by any means at being a vigilante. Now, if we're going to go on to the Riddler, wow, was he so creepy for just being, a simple villain without him having to do anything in a certain scene, like just him in the prisoner scene, just sitting there. He was so creepy. The way that he would stretch out his words and just start singing randomly and everything, it just shows that this really smart, elaborate man, is also pretty deranged. And the way he was basically infatuated with Batman, to the point where he believes he was almost created to carry out fear in the same way, but through different means, was so creative to me. I loved the parallels between them two, to show that, if Batman didn't want to hand out justice with his fist and for the citizens of Gotham, he could have easily become, the opposite. If Batman was a villain, everyone would be screwed. If Batman wanted to do anything like criminal-like, he's getting it done. There's nothing you can say about it. Like, it would be so hard to take him down if he was not a hero. And Catwoman, wow, she was so spot on with the way she was in it for her own agenda for a while, until she came around and eventually helped Bruce out. She's a burglar, she's a thief, she's not a hero yet. I mean, she could be considered on her way now, but she wasn't in it for the citizens of Gotham. She was in it for her friend, and she was going to leave, in which she did leave after it was all over. And that made sense. Like, why would she give up her time and her effort to just help this guy that she just met? Even if there's chemistry, she has no reason to help out the citizens of Gotham. She's a burglar. She doesn't want to. And so I loved the way that, even at the end of the movie, after everything they went through, she still left. They didn't get together right after the first movie. And that takes time. They really don't know each other that well. They're both good fighters, and that's about it. And man, when she got that cop, and you could see the claw marks all over his face, I was like, wow, that is so cool. We got to see her nails too before she left. I'm so glad that we got to see that aspect of her character, because they kind of subtly tried to show off her whip and stuff like that without making it too over the top. And that's what this movie really got down, was making things grounded, but also not taking out these comic aspects about the characters. And the indirect romance, I loved it. At the start of the film, he threw her to the wolves. He said he just watched her go into that bar, didn't care what she was going to get herself into. He just wanted the info. He didn't care. And then at the end of the movie, he almost killed for her. He pumped himself with whatever you want to call it and was going off on that man. It showed that they really did begin to care for one another throughout the film, and that wasn't the main focus. It wasn't anything. You didn't have to spend a lot of time on it, because the chemistry was clearly there, and we know that they're supposed to end up together. So I thought the way that Matt Reeves handled it was really nice. Falcone being the rat arc was such a roller coaster that I completely forgot the Riddler was still at play. Until he shot him, I forgot that the Riddler was the main guy. I was so invested in the ups and downs of Bruce's history, the Wayne's history, Falcone being a rat, doing whatever he could to get leverage on Thomas Wayne, just to have him in his pocket, as with everyone else, as we come to find out, was so good because we were thrown all over the place. And that goes back to what I was saying about, clearly, this version of Batman is not the one that we know. He's not that experienced. Because him and Gordon got it wrong. And that was great. We got to see them fail, try to pick up the pieces, fail overall, but then eventually save everyone that they could and the city. But if anything, the city might be worse because of it. We'll have to find out in the next upcoming TV shows and the next movies and stuff. But he is more equipped to handle it now. But again, that arc was just, I loved it. And it did feel like a detective film. He was really trying to figure out all these answers, and more questions just kept coming up. With that said, though, and talking more about the character growth, Batman quite literally carried the light of the flare and the citizens to safety. And so while she was hesitant at first, the new mayor eventually comes around to him, which could help out these new problems that will arise. He might have a decent relationship with her now, and might have more of Gotham's resources aiding him in his ventures. Whether the red marketing was just a cool color factor or not, when I saw that flare, I immediately thought of all the red and black marketing for this movie, and I thought that was so cool. Like, whether it was intended or not, it seemed to me like that's where this Batman was headed. Like, that's what we were supposed to get out of the coloring. Like, you can't get that out of the color, but you know what I mean. Like, the marketing for this movie was about the end of this Batman's journey. If that makes any sense, I just thought that the coloring and the red flare was really cool. My girlfriend also pointed out how she thought it seemed very similar to stories like Moses and the Red Sea from the Bible, as well as other clear references like the flooding of the city and stuff during that whole final act. As Catwoman leaves, we get a clear Bloodhaven reference where Nightwing spends a lot of his time at. I thought that was really interesting because throughout the movie we were teased with a few potential candidates who could be a Robin. I mean, we haven't really seen a Robin on screen in a while. So whether it's the old mayor's son or it's the original gang member, it would be pretty cool. It seems like there could be a little Robin Nightwing tease coming in. Maybe not just yet because we're still pretty early on, but down the line would be pretty cool. Going back to the adrenaline that we were talking about, it could have been Venom, which is the drug that Bane uses to, give him his strength and everything. Which, I mean, since we clearly got that Joker reference that they've kind of encountered each other before, maybe he's encountered Bane or the person who makes the drug, or it could have just been adrenaline or whatever else. But we'll see. Could be a nice little tease. And what a clear reference to the villain Thomas Elliot, aka Hush. If you didn't catch it, it was from the footage the Riddler played for Batman while he was in the old Wayne Manor or the orphanage. And it had the word Hush flash across the screen, as well as the reporter's last name that Thomas Wayne, wanted to not go away, but wanted to be handled. That reporter's last name was Elliot, which could be setting up Thomas Elliot, maybe a descendant of some kind, to be the sequel villain. Which would be pretty cool. We haven't seen him on screen, and it would be a similar, fairly grounded villain, kind of like the Riddler. The face paint on that gang member who didn't want to be there, who could be a potential Robin, whether it was because of his, initiation, or if he just didn't want to be there. It was really cool to see that he was the only one with half his face painted. It in my opinion, it kind of seemed like it was just to show that he wasn't fully committed and that he really didn't want to be there if he didn't have to be. And another little thing, the scene where Gordon and Batman leave the Penguin tied up was so good. This movie has so many nice, funny moments without even intentionally trying to be funny or cracking jokes. In that scene, they leave the Penguin tied up, and he's quite literally waddling. How do you capture that on screen? Because there's like literally no other way to do that on screen. And so that was just perfect to me. And then that Joker cameo. I know we've seen the Joker lots and lots of times on film. We've got multiple versions, present. But he does seem pretty interesting. From the little that we see of him, he looks like he'll be terrifying. Some people thought it was Two-Face because his face looks mangled. It looks like he's got some decent scarring. And so I'm all for seeing a kind of Joker like this who is also teaming up with the Riddler, because, we had those scenes of the Riddler, stretching out the name Bruce Wayne and stuff. So, if you want to lean on one end, if he does, know Bruce's identity, having a Joker who knows this would be pretty formidable, I think. If we've got an early on Joker who already knows Batman's identity, that would be pretty extreme and really help him get the upper hand on him. And if you've seen any of those shots where we got the actor Barry's smile, it looks so good. It looks so comic accurate. How is his smile that good? It is creepy. And that was just a few things that I caught on my first viewing. I may go and watch it again because honestly, that 3 hours did not seem like 3 hours to me. But let me know what you think. If any of these sound absolutely right to you, if any of these sound wrong, if you noticed anything else, put it down in the comments because I'd love to hear it. And that's that. See ya.